The Diary of a Home Care Worker by Rita Nemo with Julian Hutchings. Episode 7. Wednesday. I got into trouble yesterday. I go and see a gentleman called Bill. No, it's a different Bill, who lives in some flats. I've been going to him for years. I think I'm the only carer he sees. He's a lovely man, very talkative and very knowledgeable about the world. He listens to the radio all the time. He has 5 radios in his house, all tuned to a different station and all on really loud and playing in different rooms in the house. He has Radio 5 in the living room, Radio 4 in the kitchen, LBC in the toilet — I hate LBC — Classic FM in the bedroom and Radio 4 Extra in the dining room. He's always ready for a conversation. I think he plans the topic in advance so he can hit me with it as soon as I come through the door. "Rita," he says, "what do you think about such and such?" And then he's off. He likes an argument, so sometimes I adopt the opposite view from his, just so we can spar a bit. The other day we had an argument about Europe. He thinks we should leave the EU, but I'm not so sure. I think we should stick to what we know. He thinks we've lost our sovereignty and the Human Rights Act is ruining everything. I tried to tell him that the Human Rights Act is not a European Union thing, but he won't have it. "Anyway," I said, "we've still got the Queen and all her useless family, so I don't see how we've lost our sovereignty. If we stayed in the EU but voted to lose the Queen, that would suit me just fine." I'm not a monarchist, Diary, as you can't guess. Bill didn't like that. He loves the Queen, and he especially likes the Duchess of Cambridge, and the new one, Meghan, Duchess of wherever. He thinks she's very attractive, and he likes her frocks. "Nice frock," he'll say, looking at her picture in the Daily Express while I'm combing his hair. "Very nice filly." But Bill's not the reason I got into trouble. I've been seeing him regularly, as I say, and often when I go and see him I pass a man on the stairs or in the lobby. After I'd seen him a few times, we said hello to each other, and then we'd stop for a little chat, and then we chatted for a bit longer. You know how it is. Now I look forward to seeing him, and I think he hangs around waiting for me to turn up. There's nothing happening that I'm ashamed of. I'm not looking for a partner, even if that no-good-nick — I love that word — Tim has lost interest in me. And he's married. His name is Lionel. We just like a little chat, but other people don't see it like that. I got a call from the agency, and they said I had to come into the office. There was something they needed to discuss. This is something else I don't get paid for, incidentally, and it costs me bus fare to get to the office unless I go by bike, which I do sometimes. "We've had a complaint about you," said Jenny, who's one of the coordinators. Jenny's not too bad usually, but she's no smarter than she needs to be, if you know what I mean. "What about?" I said. "We had an email from someone in the block where Bill lives saying that you are having a thing with a woman's husband who lives in the same block." "Are you serious?" I said. I was livid. "Spitting fathers," as Albert said to me once. I think he meant feathers. "I'm not having a thing with anyone. Is it Lionel? I just talked to him. Has Bill complained?" "No," said Jenny. "We spoke to Bill and he's really pleased with you. But I needed to talk to you. We're getting a lot of hassle from these other people." "Can I see the emails?" I said. Said Jenny. "Let me just ask my manager." She went and spoke to her manager. "Yeah, I can show you," she said. She turned her computer screen round so I could read them. They were rude and offensive and disgusting and full of spelling mistakes. This is just a few of them. "Your carer is seeing my friend's husband. You need to stop it. It's all wrong. Your attitude stinks. If you had any decency at all, you wouldn't allow this. I used to run a business. I would never let that happen. I'm going to write to my MP and Daily Mail. Just you wait, see if you like being in the papers. So you think that's acceptable, do you? Let people run around after another man. My friend is besides herself. I'm contacting the Quality Care Commission and get you closed down. You people are just scum. This wouldn't happen if we didn't have private companies running everything. This is all going on Facebook. See how you like it. My solicitor says you're going to jail. What you're doing is not right. No way." Why would people write that stuff? And why is their English so bad? "Who are they from?" I said. "We don't know who it is," said Jenny. "It must be someone who lives in the block." "What are you going to reply?" I asked. My manager's going to say that it's none of their business. You've been going to see Bill for a number of years and he's very pleased with you, and this is a private matter and none of their business." "I'm not having a thing," I said. "Believe me, I'm not having a thing." "I believe you," said Jenny. "Some people, really, I couldn't believe it. I'm going to see Bill tomorrow. I hope I see Lionel. We could go for a coffee." Tuesday. My agency is being inspected by the Care Quality Commission. We got a text from the agency yesterday which said they'd had notification of an inspection and CQC inspectors might want to talk to us. Apparently they've also got experts by experience, whatever that is. Well, all I can say is I hope they pick me, because I could tell them a thing or two. I looked in the CQC website and it said they inspect organisations and judge whether they are safe, effective, responsive, caring and well led, and then give them a rating of outstanding, good, requires improvement or inadequate. I don't want to work for a company which is described as inadequate, but what does that mean? I'm a good worker, I think. I'm caring, and I respond well. I always respond if I'm asked something, and I think I'm effective at what I do, and I'm safe, although I did once stand on a chair to fix some curtains for Albert, which I'm not supposed to do, but it needed doing. I have no idea what well-led means. But why does it keep changing? I've been around long enough to remember the National Care Standards and the Commission for Social Care Inspection, C-SKY, we called it, and now it's the Care Quality Commission, and they keep on changing the way they inspect. Methodology, they call it, but nothing much seems to change for me. I mean, I still get rubbish pay, I still don't get paid for my travel or my travel time, I still have to do loads of 15-minute visits, although fewer than I did. I still get in trouble if I'm 5 minutes early or late, and the service users, most of them, still don't get the time they need. So what difference does it make if there's a report on their website? It makes me so mad. Go online, it says. Download the report. Most of my service users can hardly see, and even if they could see, they don't have a computer. And if they did have a computer, they couldn't use it, and most of them wouldn't want to, so who cares anyway? I've read some CQC reports, and they all seem a bit amateurish to me. And I've never read one that wasn't full of spelling mistakes and childish grammatical errors. Even my Richard could do better than that, and he's 13 and watches YouTube all the time. I don't think the inspectors know diddly, if I'm honest. Why don't they spend a day with me, following me around? See how they like getting up at 5 a.m. to get the bus or ride my bike in the freezing cold and go and do 15 visits in a day, some of them 15 minutes, to people who are blind and deaf and lonely and incontinent and racist, or who put their hand up your skirt and their family tell you to clean up their dirty dishes while their mum lies in her own piss and they play computer games. Come on, Inspector, walk a mile in my shoes, if they'll fit, and I'll find out and you'll find out what things are really like. But they don't want to do that. Instead, they send out a questionnaire or ask if you know what safeguarding means or have you had any training in the Mental Capacity Act, and check your file in the office to see if you've signed the form. It's a joke. What a waste of time. What a laugh. Not. But what will really change? Some carers are good and some aren't. Some are caring and some aren't. Some service users are nice and some aren't. That's life, isn't it? You're dealing with human beings, as Albert says. I don't think it's the agency's fault, if I'm honest. They have a pretty impossible job. My agency delivers 3,000 hours of service a week. If an average visit is half an hour, that means they're organising 6,000 visits a week. Well, if you have problems with 1% of those visits, that's 60 visits a week. You do the maths, you don't believe me. Where someone is left potentially in a life-threatening situation. They have a fall or heart attack or don't get their medication on time or don't get a drink or something to eat, or they're left in bed for 24 hours with their catheter leaking all over the bedclothes, or they've lost their denture in the shit in the commode. I mean, it's impossible, isn't it? Service users are always saying to me, the agency is a shambles. I used to be in business. I could show them how it should be done. But I don't think they could really. God knows I wouldn't want a job in the office. Why would you do a job like that? The same reason I do this, I suppose. The same reason anyone does anything, really. It's my job. It's what I know. It's what I do. I think I should apply for a job in the office, Diary. See what it's like. Maybe I can do it better. My mate Meg says I should get a job in Tesco's or Sainsbury's or Waitrose or even Lidl. They're almost posh now, aren't they? But I couldn't do that. Ping, ping, ping. Have you got your own bags? Ping, ping, ping. Enter your PIN number, please. Ping, ping, ping. Sorry, this doesn't have a barcode. Ping, ping, ping. Have you got a nectar? Ping, ping, ping. Contactless, is it? Ping, ping, ping. Are you collecting the vouchers? Have you got a parking ticket? I don't want to measure out my life in pings, thank you very much. I'll measure it out in pongs instead. Wednesday. I've been interviewed. There was 2 of them, and it was a good cop, bad cop thing. There was 2 of them, and it was a good cop, bad cop thing. One was nice and asked the questions, and the other one was a mean, stuck-up cow who never smiled and took notes. It was exciting. I told them about my pay and the short visits, and not being paid for travel time, but I couldn't tell if they were interested. They didn't take any notes when I spoke about my pay and conditions. They asked a lot of questions about medication and MAR charts, Medicines Administration records, just so you know. We have to write down any prompting or support we give to people with medication, and it's a pain and takes time, but I suppose it's necessary. They asked me what I knew about the Mental Capacity Act. They seemed obsessed with that. And if I knew how to raise a safeguarding alert. I do. And they asked me about the managers at the agency. Are you well led? They said. What the hell does that mean? I said they were all right. Well, they are. Anyway, they've employed me for 12 years. I asked them if they wanted to spend the day with me, seeing what it was really like on the front line, trying to do all your visits, but they said they didn't have time. They had to write up their report. They told me the report would come out in about 2 months' time, and I could download it from their website. I can't wait. I hope they quote me right. Friday. We got a memo from the agency about CQC. They say that CQC are very tight on everything and won't hesitate to close an agency down if it's not meeting the standards. They're putting the frighteners on us poor care workers on the front line. I don't see why we should always be blamed. A lot of the problems in home care are caused by crap rotas with no travel time and the agency making us call cram by giving us too many visits. It's not just care workers messing up, although that does happen. Anyway, I shall be on my best behaviour. Aren't I always? Tuesday. I didn't have a good day today. One of my service users died. It sounds very cold when you say it like that, doesn't it? Her name was Rose, and she was 97. I've been going to see her for about 6 months. She was very independent. She lived in a little one-bedroom flat on the ground floor. I knew she was dead as soon as I went in the flat. She had a key safe in case she couldn't answer the door, so I used the key to let myself in. I called her name and said it was me, like I always do, but there was no reply. There was a stillness and a silence in the flat which felt strange. She was in the living room, lying on the sofa. Her mouth was open, but her eyes were closed, and she was very pale and rigid. It was like she was made of marble. She must have laid down on the sofa for a rest and died in her sleep. She looked quite peaceful. I used her phone to log in, and then I called the agency. They said I should call an ambulance and then go to my next client. I can't leave her, I said. Why not? Said Jenny. She's not going anywhere. Because it's not right to leave someone when they've just died. Where's the dignity? It's only a half-hour call, said Jenny. If you stay longer, you'll still only get paid for half an hour. Can't you call a social worker and get the call extended? This is crazy. You're right, it is crazy, said Jenny. But that's what we've been told. Cutbacks. Cutbacks will kill us all, I said. Isn't there any leeway? No. I stayed anyway. It wasn't right to leave her. The whole home care system in this country relies on people like me working either for nothing or for virtually nothing. When are the politicians and ordinary people, and let's face it, it's ordinary people who are going to have to pay more taxes to pay for it, going to realise that? I did some tidying up and cleaned up in the kitchen, but I didn't touch her. It was 45 minutes before the ambulance turned up. I phoned them to see what the delay was, and the call handler said, "You know what the health service is like, cutbacks." I told the paramedics who I was, and the time I'd arrived, and what I found when I entered the flat. They checked her over and did some tests. Then they brought in the trolley and moved her onto the trolley and covered her and took her out to the ambulance. I used her phone to log out and then closed the door and put the key back in the key safe. The ambulance was still parked outside and the paramedics were doing their paperwork. Lots of my service users have died over the years. It's sad, but you get used to it. Rose was nice, and I used to go and see her a lot. I would like to have visited her out of working hours, but the agency has very strict rules about that sort of thing. We don't talk about that time with Thomas, diary, so I didn't go, even though she asked me to. There are lots of rules like that, and I don't really know why. It's not hurting anyone. I remember one time I was passing her place on my day off, and I thought she might need some milk, so I bought her a pint and took it round to her. She was grateful, but another care worker saw me and told the agency about it, and I was suspended for 2 days with no pay while they investigated. 2 days with no pay for buying an old lady a pint of milk. I couldn't believe it. But what can you do? 200 years ago I could have been deported to Australia for stealing a pint of milk, so I suppose that's progress of a sort. I think we should get a union involved in care work, and then people like me might have a bit more protection. But no one likes unions now, do they? It's Thatcher's Britain, even though it's not Thatcher anymore, but Theresa May. But it is really, if you know what I mean, Thatcher. We're all on our own. I don't understand why they have rules like that. I was only being kind. But kindness is not valued very much now, is it? Thursday. I went to see Lady G today. I'll call her Lady Gaga, but that's not her real name, obviously, and nor is she. Gaga, I mean. My mum used to describe people as Gaga when I was little. "I've been to see your Auntie Mo," she'd say. "She's completely Gaga now." I thought it was a horrible way to talk about someone. I'd never heard of dementia, or Alzheimer's, then. She also used to describe people as dementing. "I went to see your Auntie Mo yesterday," she'd say. "Poor woman is dementing." This was before Harry Potter, of course. Richard loves Harry Potter. And the Dementors, even. I think it's the reason I got into care work, to help people who were Gaga and dismissed as useless by my mother, who, oh, irony of ironies, suffered from dementia herself and died 3 years ago, bitter and angry and nutty as a fruitcake, which was another of her expressions. Anyway, Lady Gaga is, as you can guess, a lady and has pots of money, but is, I'm sorry to say, a deeply unpleasant person. I wish I could say that all my service users are lovely, because most of them are, but Lady Gaga most definitely is not. She has been married 4 times, and all of her husbands are dead, which seems like bad luck to me, although she doesn't seem to mind. I think she must have inherited the money each time, and that's why she's so wealthy. I don't know whether she has children. If she does, she never mentions them, and they never seem to visit. I expect she was horrible to them and scared them away. Frankly, I wouldn't be at all surprised. "They sent me a frightful one yesterday," she said. "Really?" I said. "Absolutely ghastly. Do you know she could not speak a word of English, and black as the ace of spades, not that I'm racist. I will be very pleased when we're out of this damn Europe business and don't have all these foreigners coming over. I do get sick of them. Thank God for Rees-Mogg. At least he talks a bit of sense. Lady Gaga thinks all black people come from Europe, although I'm not sure why. Lady Gaga is not very mobile and spends most of her time sitting by the big bay window of her flat, looking out at the goings-on in the street below and giving a running commentary. "There's Lord Patriarch heading out to his club again," she said. "Silly old fool. There's no fool like an old fool, and there's no old fool like an old rich fool. Do you know he had a cleaning lady from Romania? He was besotted with the little tart, and he gave her absolutely oodles of money and jewellery and all sorts of presents and furs. And it turns out that she was an illegal and got deported, and he lost everything. He's heartbroken. Doesn't care about the money, but he thought she loved him, and is convinced she'll come back. Silly old fool. Don't expect anything from me, Rita. There's nothing in my will for you." "Thank you, Lady Gaga," I said, "but I wouldn't have accepted it anyway. It's against the rules." "Just as well, then. You won't miss what you never had. We have to bring plastic shoe covers when we go to her flat and cover our shoes so that we wander around with blue plastic bags on our feet and look like Eskimos. if Eskimos have blue plastic bags on their feet. Lady Gaga's flat is filled to the brim with ornaments, pictures, souvenirs, mementos, plants, dishes, vases, bowls, mansion clocks, and hundreds of silver picture frames covering every available surface and containing photos of the great and the good and the not-so-great and the not-so-good from the last 60 years of British society. I don't recognise most of them. I've seen Mrs. Thatcher, and I recognise Ted Heath in one, and Des O'Connor, I think, and Joan Collins and Roger Moore, but the rest are men in dinner suits and women in long dresses with lots of jewellery looking down their noses at people like me. "Get me some tea, dearie," said Lady Gaga. She always talks like that. I've never once heard her say please or thank you, or in fact say a nice word about anyone or anything. Tell a lie. Except Bruce Forsyth, of course. She loved Strictly Come Dancing, although she refuses to watch it now that Bruce is no longer presenting and misses him, now he's dead. I think she knew him. "I'm not watching those silly tarts," she says. "I don't know what William is doing, marrying a common tart," she said to me back in the day when the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge were courting. "The girl's a nobody, no breeding. Wasn't her mother an air hostess?" "I think she was originally," I remember saying, "but then they ran their own business." "In trade, were they? How positively ghastly. And William seemed such a nice boy. Lost all his hair, didn't he? Shame. Runs in the family. What sort of business?" "I'm not sure. Party Novelties, I think." Lady Gaga looked at me suspiciously. "Party Novelties? What exactly are Party Novelties?" You know," I was floundering a bit. "Balloons, party poppers, paper hats, streamers, plastic cutlery, that sort of thing." "Plastic cutlery?" said Lady Gaga. "Really? What a strange idea." Lady Gaga, having pots of money, is a private client and buys 2 hours of care per day from the agency, which I sometimes do, depending on what's on my rota. I don't know what she pays the agency, but I bet it's a lot. I, however, still get the same money. She got me to do housework and a lot of silver punishing, as well as cleaning up after her cat, which is called Lucan. "Because he keeps disappearing," said Lady Gaga. She says this every time I visit her, and originally I thought it was a joke, but now I'm not so sure. I think she had a thing for Lord Lucan, you know, diary, the one who murdered his nanny, allegedly, when she was younger, and misses him. He's an indoor cat, is Lucan, no teeth, and has cat aids, so he's not allowed out. I imagine he disappears into the nooks and crannies of her massive flat, and you can imagine the state of his cat tray. Lucan has a habit of squatting in the tray with his bum hanging outside and then doing his business on the carpet. God, it stinks. And of course I have to clear it up. But Lady Gaga doesn't mind or care, or both. I'm not really a cat person, to be honest. I mean, I don't mind them. It's just they don't do a lot for me. I'm a dog person, really. The strangest thing, though, is that Lucan is the least affectionate cat I have come across in my life. He never sits on her lap and runs away when you try to stroke him. I've given up trying. He hates me, and I think he hates her too, not that I blame him. And so the two of them, Lady Gaga and the miserable disappearing Lord Lucan, as I call them, are seeing out their days bound together in faeces, snobbery, bitterness and luxury. What a combination. "Shut the door when you leave," says Lady Gaga when I go, and so I do. Friday. Well, it's finally happened. I didn't think it would come to this, but my agency is closing down. I suppose I thought that this company would survive. You hear about all the problems with home care businesses, and they tell you about being short of money, but somehow you don't really believe it. A bit like cancer or winning the lottery, it's something that happens to someone else, to other companies. But if there's one thing that you learn doing this job, it's that bad things do happen to people like us, people like me, people who can't afford it and haven't done anything to deserve it. We're the ones that suffer. We're the ones that get shafted. We had a letter from the big boss, the top boss. It says they're pulling out of home care and closing down because they're not making any money and can't afford it. It says we're not to blame, but the economics don't add up. It gives 3 reasons. 1, local authorities aren't giving price increases, or the increases are too small to cover the increases in cost. 2, the national living wage is being introduced and they don't believe they can afford to pay it. 3, the government has introduced a new training requirement called the care certificate, and they can't see how to introduce it without major investment which they can't afford. But, it says, and this is the sort of silver lining, it says that their remaining contracts and staff will transfer to other companies and our jobs will continue under the TUPE regulations. Well, we'll see. I remember when Tim, he was working for a cleaning company and they transferred under TUPE to another contractor and his job and his terms and conditions were protected. Yeah, right. And a week later they were all forced to take a pay cut and work longer hours and then they fired him. Well, that's what he said, but to be honest, he's been fired from so many jobs, who knows what the real reason was. Anyway, that's what the letter says. Our jobs will continue, but we'll be working for someone else. Which begs the question, what does this other company do that means they'll be able to keep going, but my agency can't? Well, if I knew that, and knew how to run an agency and be successful and make lots of money, then I'd do it myself. But I don't. They've given us 3 months' notice before it all closes down, which gives us time to meet the other company and make the arrangements. To be honest, I'm in two minds. I'm sad and disappointed that this agency is closing down, but I also have a chance to join another company, which, who knows, might be better. Or maybe it's time I did something different with my life. I've wiped enough bums. Thursday. I met with the other company and they offered me an interview for a job in the office, and guess what? I got it. More money, obviously. I'm going to be what they call, there I go again, a care coordinator, which means I'll be organising rotas, talking to clients and carers on the phone, using the computer and sort of being in charge of people. Sounds a bit daunting. I hope I don't turn into a right bitch. I've seen other carers become coordinators and the power really goes to their heads, and they start lording it over people and shouting and sacking people the first chance they get. They say I'll get some training, and I hope I do. I'm okay on the computer, WhatsApp and email and Facebook and all that, but this is a bit different. I hope I can manage it. I certainly know what it's like to be a care worker and what the problems are and what happens when your rota is rubbish and you're travelling back and forth all over town with no travel time built in, so I suppose I should be able to do better at that. And I suppose I can be nice and polite to social workers and district nurses when I have to be. And it turns out that this company is really into technology. All the care workers have a phone which they use to log in and out, and they get rotas on their phones, so no more paper rotas to leave on the bus, and they get all the information they need on their phone about medication and stuff. Sounds amazing. Perhaps if my company had invested in some of that stuff, they'd still be in business. I haven't had a real office job for years, so I'm a bit nervous, but I'm excited. It's a new chapter in my life. Wish me luck. And the big news is, me and Tim are getting back together. I know, diary, you think I'm making a mistake, but I still love him, really. He still does it for me, and he is Richard's dad. I know that sounds a bit like staying together for the kids, but it's not. I was reading back through these pages the other night at what we've got up to over the last month, and there's a bit where I say sometimes Tim looks at me in a certain way, or says something, and I can remember why I fell in love with him. And I suppose that's it, really. Maybe it's enough, and maybe it isn't. We'll see. But I'm still not getting a tattoo of his name. Oh, and Richard has a girlfriend. Her name is Sarah, tall, brown hair, quite pretty, glasses, in his class, and they text and Snapchat each other all the time. I don't see him much, and when I do, he's on his phone, but he's happy. She's come around a few times, and when she does, she takes her shoes off and they disappear up to his room, and I don't hear from them for the rest of the afternoon. Not sure if that's a good or a bad sign, and I'm not sure what she takes off when they get upstairs. One day I need to check. After all, if it was me and Kev Grimes, but that's another diary, which I found, and is as embarrassing as I thought it would be, by the way. And last of all, I'm going to give you a rest, diary, for a while, anyway. You were there when I needed someone to talk to, and when my life was a bit rubbish, and you helped me when I was lonely. But I feel I've turned over a new page in my life, and I'm going to try and manage without you for a bit. I'll miss you, but I hope you'll be there when if I need you again. You've been listening to The Diary of a Home Care Worker by Rita Nemo with Julian Hutchings. If you'd like to read the book, you can get it from Amazon, either as a paperback or as a download for your Kindle. Thanks for listening.